used Islamic marriage as a way of having a sexual relationship with a woman without making a legal commitment.
Without making a
legal commitment.
What kind of commitment?
A legal one, like at the registry office. So
yeah, that's called boyfriend-girlfriend relationship. You've got to have it.
Yeah,
you've got to have it.
Exactly, under Islamic law. That allows boyfriend-girlfriend relationship under the, our legal system without any legal commitment.
Islamic
you can just leave her.
No, but what I mean, yeah, you can do that when you're in a sexual relationship with a prostitute in this country, isn't it?
We can do that on Islamic marriage.
Well, technically you can. I mean, technically a woman can get married to a man, and then a man can get married to a woman, and then they can mistreat each other and promise each other things that are not right. But the spirit of the law would say that that's not a right thing to do.
I was hearing about it. There was a series of documentaries at the Birmingham Central Mosque on the Channel 4 documentary. That's what I heard about it. It's a boyfriend-girlfriend thing going on within the Muslim community.
Yeah, so we wouldn't call it boyfriend-girlfriend relationship. Obviously, we would call it marriage. But the way in Birmingham, I'm not really sure what's happening there. There are some, once again, there are abuses,
I thought there was something really funny there. They had a day for like a matchmaking day, and
I've seen those.
Yeah, and there was a woman sitting down, and the guy come to sit down, and she asked him, how many wives do you want? And he went like this, like as if he was counting, looking up into the corner of the room, counting. And before he could answer, she said, next.
But do you know what? Can I tell you something? What's your name again?
Robert.
Robert, I'll be honest with you, Robert. Right? Robert, the truth is this. The truth is, a lot of the time, because obviously you're born and raised in this country, yeah. And you're looking at other communities like the Muslim community, maybe or the Jewish community. This is. I sometimes look at it as well. It's quite amusing, right? But the truth is, all of that which you're amazed of or amused of or find interesting about that, unusual, peculiar, I would say exists in mainstream non-Muslim kind of society. So for instance, this idea of polyandry, yeah? Or this idea of having multiple partners. I mean, I think that is more now the rule than the exception in this country. I do think many people get into relationships with the view of having multiple partners, having a short-term relationship, and this kind of thing.
Women want one partner and men want more.
Say that again, sorry?
Women want one partner generally, but,
yes, but men want more.
Yeah.
Well,
it's an instinctive genetic thing.
Yeah, I would
same
agree.
with bulls in the fields, isn't it?
Absolutely, and that's why Islam came to cater for that reality by introducing polygamy, but making it illegal and making it kind of institutionalized, if you like, in this marriage, in this context of marriage. So it's this whole scenario that you brought up, where there's a man and a woman, and she was asking him, how many wives you want, and he was counting.
While he was counting in his head, she'd already moved on and was looking for next.
But do you know what? That is a very, I would say, a very open and very good question people should ask each other before they get into a relationship. Because from an Islamic perspective, if a man and a woman want to be in a relationship together, right? And the rule is in Islam, a man can marry up to 4 wives, yeah? Now, if the woman says, look, I don't want to do this, she doesn't have to be in that relationship. And she can even put a clause in the contract saying that if you do it, then there's an automatic divorce. But what I'm saying is that conversation about polygamy before the relationship takes place, or that conversation about having multiple partners, is something which a lot of people miss, Muslims and non-Muslims. Because I think a lot of the time, that's an assumption going into the relationship, right? Like, even I've seen this among non-Muslim friends of mine.
Different assumptions going on.
Yeah.
The woman might be in love with the fella, and she's just assuming that she's going to be with this one partner for the rest of her life.
Exactly.
And the guy's thinking, oh, well, this is number one. I've got number ones in the bag.
100%. And you would agree with me that happens no matter what religion you are. A man can have that thought, whatever religion, whatever part of the world you are.
So there are many women who haven't read the small print when they go into a marriage. It's,
that's exactly right.
When you're online, you're asked, do you accept? Tick. Of course they're thinking, I love this person, I just want to get married, and
that's it.
I'm not going to read the small print.
I'm not going to read the small print.
Yeah,
but they get into that relationship, Stephen, with that, Stephen, isn't it?
Robert.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, I just guessed your name there. Robert, so, they get into that relationship, right? And they make those assumptions, but from the statistics that have been collated in this country and elsewhere, you know, the fact that men have more than...
Women wouldn't be disadvantaged if everybody who had a marriage registered it with the authorities, legally registered it. Then there wouldn't be women that were disadvantaged when, you know, the man's eyes wander after a few years, and he starts reading in the book. Oh yeah, I can get away with this.
There's some issues with it. Do you know what it is, right? Divorce is much easier in Islam than it is in civil law.
Yeah, well, it wouldn't be if everyone registered their marriage.
No, what I mean is that if someone wanted to get divorced and they're within the scope of, like, you know, they've registered their marriage, it's very difficult and sometimes very costly to get a divorce. Whereas Islam allows an easier exit. No, it's not that easy. Okay, maybe I elaborated upon that in a way that maybe is not right. But what I'm trying to say is, if a woman wants to get divorced or a man wants to get divorced in Islam, all they really have to do, for a man it's easier actually,
You shout it out 4 times.
No, it's 3.
For the woman, it's 3.
No, but you know, you don't do it in one majlis, you don't do it in one
But a woman, why can't a woman do that, you see? It's not equal.
It's not equal. No, I agree with you.
Okay, so what I want is for all your sisters and
brothers
within the Muslim community,
but can I say
to experience the same equal rights as everyone else in this country.
This is what I'll say to you, right? In Islam, the presupposition is that different things should be treated differently, right? So you and I, just in the beginning of this conversation, you said, and I heard you say it, you said that we as men, we want to be in polygamous relationship. Women don't want to be in that kind of relationship. They only want one. What I'm saying is that that's a physiological, biological reality, isn't it? And Islam says, okay, let's cater for that need. Just like when sometimes a woman has a difference which is so glaring that Islam says, let's cater for that need. So the premise is, where there's difference, that should be catered for in the prescription. So the reason why there's not an absolute equality, we believe in a general equality in Islam, but not an absolute one. So for instance, a man, to initiate a divorce, it's much easier for a man to initiate a divorce than a woman, right? All you have to literally do is say a word. For a woman though, it's really interesting, this is something that people don't know. It's not as easy for her to initiate a divorce, but it's harder for her, it's easier for her to end one. So if she goes to a qadi or she goes to a judge and she puts her case forward, and even if the man is unwilling, she gets her divorce, then what you call the intermittent period or the period of finalization is 1 month. Whereas the period of finalization, if the man does it, is 3 months. So, whereas a man will find it easier to initiate a divorce, a woman finds it easier to finalize one. And by the way, when that divorce takes place from an Islamic perspective, there's also certain rights that women has that men don't have. Like breastfeeding.
The men have right to more money than a woman.
Say that again?
The men have more right to the money than the women do.
Women do. Women have more right to money.
I thought under Islamic divorce, the men ended up with more assets than the women.
Well, here's the thing, right? In America, I was just in America. This is a very good thing you brought this up. I'm very happy you brought this up. And when I was in America, I was having a discussion with someone about this, because in some states, if for example, you get married to a woman, right? And you're a millionaire and she doesn't have the money, right? And then after a certain amount of time, and it differs from time to time, after a certain amount of time, you get divorced, right? Now, it might be the case that she gets 50% and you get 50% of the overall money that you have. Islam doesn't say this. Islam says that that's injustice, because she didn't earn that money. You know, frankly, she didn't. If you got married to someone and then she gets half of what you have earned all your life, that's against capitalism, frankly. It's even against liberalism. So the point is this, is that Islam does allow certain privileges for a woman, but it doesn't allow her to take your earnings or your assets. So for example, if I own 3 houses and I get divorced to my wife, I can't give her 1.5 houses. You see what I'm trying to say? But obviously this situation changes if I have children with her, and the children have certain rights, and if she's breastfeeding, she has certain rights, and so on. Yeah, but the idea that you can get married, that's not equality, that's not feminism, that's nothing. If a woman, for example, put it this way, flip it around. If a woman married a man and she was a millionaire and he had no money, let's say, and they were in a relationship together for 5 years, and after 5 years they got divorced and the man took half of what the woman earned, then that would be a miscarriage of justice. So I think that some of the laws, I will even look at them and say that they're quite backward and they're contradictory, because you know why? Because they look to me like to be honest, they're contradicting the essence of meritocracy, of liberalism, of earning money for yourself and so on.
I would like everyone to have the same rule.
Would you agree with that?
I would agree that everyone should have the same legal rights.
Yeah, okay, but...
regardless of what religion.
Okay, well, let me tell you this, right? See, well, one more thing, Robert. If a man and a woman are together and they get divorced, and they have children, where should the children go?
Well, that depends on any particular case. It's the children's interests that should be uppermost.
Yes.
So sometimes it might be the man and sometimes the woman.
Okay, that's a good answer. We would agree with that answer, right? But there was a famous story where a woman came to Prophet Muhammad, and she said to him, and he said to her, look, you know, you're getting divorced and so on. And she said to him, you know, this child, I raised the children in my lap, and, you know, I gave them my breast milk and so on. And so he ruled in her favor, and that became precedent for later jurisprudential rulings. The point being is, certain things, biological and physiological, women have not only an advantage in, but they have a higher output in. So for example, the fact that women can breastfeed, or that they're pregnant, or that they give birth, that should be taken into consideration when rulings are done, right? So there's no equality there, because frankly, in that specific case, the woman should have certain advantages or certain things that are catered for. Like for example, a man should be able to give her, if he's divorcing her and she's breastfeeding, then why is he not giving her money for that milk if it's her children and his children, right? So in Islamic law, the man has to give the woman money for that milk if he divorced her, and some schools even say whilst they're married together, because it's both of their children that we're talking about. But the point I'm making is that this nuance, which results from anatomical and biological difference, is sometimes lost in translation when we're talking about country law. So, okay, well, everything should be equal. But what about those circumstances there? What about if you have a disabled person? There's always going to be some variable which is going to make things a little bit different. And sometimes that variable can be a biological one, which results directly from gender or even sex. So I would say that, yeah, I agree with you, generally speaking, about this.
I think it's a danger of being just dogmatic, that you have to look in the book to see what the book says.
Well, that's what lawyers do.
But the judges don't always do that in a divorce case with children. They don't look in a book and say, oh, well, I call this. What they do is they look at the case before them.
Yeah, but they also look at precedents and case law, which is usually in a book.
However, they're not dogmatic when it comes to these issues.
Yeah, I agree that you should have flexibility in Mali, but I do agree. Yeah.
So what I want to tell you is about a recent court case which has set a precedent regarding Islamic divorce. So, in the Marriage Act, there are marriages, there are relationships which aren't marriages.
Yes.
And there
civil partnership.
Yes, you've got legal marriages.
Civil partnership.
So you've got marriages that aren't registered,
yes.
marriages that are,
yes,
and relationships that aren't.
Yes.
So an Islamic marriage,
yes,
has been ruled,
yes,
as a marriage under law, but not registered, even though it's not registered. So a Muslim woman,
yes,
can get the exact same rights now. This is just over 6 months ago. So even though you haven't registered your marriage and you divorce and you think you don't have any obligation to pay or anything, that's not the case. It's not the case. It's not the case.
No, but you know what's even more interesting though? If a woman, think of it this way, just do a study. I know this might not.
So that is an important point.
Yeah, I get it.
If a Muslim does a marriage under Islamic law and doesn't register it, and then there is a divorce,
yes,
the woman has the exact same rights.
By the way, I don't disagree. I don't disagree with this point. I'm not against that, right? If a woman wants or a man wants to get married and go to the registry office, I'm totally for that. Yeah, I'm not against that.
But why I'm stressing this is if Muslims decide to have an Islamic marriage and deliberately don't register it at the registry office, still under the law, they have the exact same obligations as if they were married under law when it comes to dividing up the assets.
That's an interesting point of jurisprudence that we should look at.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for that, man. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
And the last thing, the fellow who was organising dating event
Yes.
in
Birmingham.
in the Birmingham Central Mosque.
Yes.
He said there is change coming to the Muslim community, and it's going to be coming through educated Muslim women.
Well, that's good. I think that we definitely need to educate Muslim women and Muslim men, and also non-Muslim women and
Everyone should be
non-Muslim men.
educated.
But thank you very much for everything.